Hello, my name's Bev and I'm the author of the book Please Eat, A Mother's Struggle to Free Her Teenage Son from Anorexia, which describes our family's battle with the deadly eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, which my teenage son Ben developed back in 2009 when he was just 15 years old. Welcome to chapter 21, which is called Another Phone Call. I'm getting seriously worried about the way Ben's coping, or rather not coping, with school. He's not sleeping, and yet he's insisting on going in every day. Night after night he sits miserably at the dinner table looking exhausted. He's isolating himself, avoiding the common room, has nothing to say to his friends and spends all his free periods, breaks and lunchtimes in the library. He goes into school dinners alone. He's eating next to nothing, yet he won't take a packed lunch. Sometimes I think the only solution would be to keep him at home. But he insists on going into school, no matter what. It's not healthy, it's not normal, and by October it's becoming clear that Ben is burned out. It's not healthy, it's not normal, and by October it's becoming clear that Ben is burned out. I'd lost contact with all my friends, Ben says a couple of years later. While I'd been away from school for all those months, they'd grown into adults, formed new relationships and made new friends. Meanwhile, I'd stood still. I felt as if I was years behind. It left me pretty isolated, which made things very difficult. Also, I think people kept their distance because they were frightened of what I might do or say, like I might do something weird. One day he misses the school bus because he's too exhausted to get out of bed. When I drive him to school, he makes no move to get out of the car. "Mum, I can't do this any longer," he says, almost calmly, looking down at the floor. Okay, I think to myself, time for plan B. Would it help if I had a word with Mrs. E to see if you could come in on a part-time basis? Mornings only, perhaps. Mrs. E is the head of sixth form, and thankfully she can see me immediately. By the end of our lengthy meeting, I think Mrs. E knows almost as much about eating disorders as I do. I'm becoming a dab hand at lecturing people these days. A new routine is agreed. For the time being, Ben will come into school part-time and will be eased in gently until he can face full days. Unfortunately, this doesn't cure the insomnia or the social isolation. No one seems to be able to do that. But it does make Ben happier and more relaxed. With Ben back under my supervision at lunchtimes, I'm happier and more relaxed too. And you know what? It's the first time in months he's actually asked me for help, calmly asked me for help. It's as if he's finally acknowledging that I am a vital part of the machine that will help him to recover. Following my meeting with Sarah, the CAM sessions have improved too. For the first time we feel like a team. Cam's and me versus the illness. Sarah is on my side and on Ben's side too. The real Ben, not the demon that pretends to be Ben. We all remain calm, forceful and strong, but calm. I discover that keeping calm is the best way to get through to Ben, just like the self-help books always said. And, with Sarah behind me, I find it easier to get the right reaction. Plus, because Ben already trusts Sarah, he begins to trust me too. Yes, he's still gradually losing weight, but for the first time I feel as if we could be moving forward. Then I get a phone call. It's the other nurse from the school medical centre. Ben's passed out in the common room and he looks terrible. She's taken his pulse and it's only registering 37. She wants me to take him to the hospital for another ECG. Suddenly it's January all over again. Me grabbing my keys and rushing into school to pick up a very pale-looking Ben from the car park. Ben doesn't want to go to the hospital, not after last time, not with the prospect of more blood tests and more needles being stuck into him. I call a taxi to take us to the hospital, where we're fast-tracked past the usual accident and emergency queue and into a curtained cubicle. And all the time Ben is insisting that the fainting was faked. He did it to get attention, he says. Ben, you can't fake your pulse rate, I say as the nurse hooks him up to the ECG machine, and my own heart does a nosedive. By the time the doctor arrives, Ben's pulse has dropped to 31. The doctor wants to take blood and Ben refuses. You passed out at school. Your pulse rate is abnormally low and we need to find out why, says the doctor, reaching for the needles. Ben starts to get hysterical. Isn't anyone listening to me? He screeches. The fainting was fake. I did it to make people take notice of me. The doctor isn't buying it. He insists on doing the bloods, gently explaining to Ben that there's a reason why his pulse is so slow. We need to find out what that reason is, he says. I can see Ben getting more and more agitated, his features reddening and his eyes darting around like a cornered animal desperately looking for an escape route. My heart is fine. I feel fantastic. I faked the fainting. Don't you see? I faked it. The doctor sits down beside Ben and looks him straight in the eye. You can't see your heart. You don't know what's going on inside your body, he says. Your pulse rate is showing 31, which is far too low. I need to know why. I don't know what I'm effing doing here. I'm fine. Suddenly Ben gets to his feet and flees down the corridor towards the main entrance, with the doctor hot on his heels. Outside in the open air, the doctor tries to pacify him. I have to do this, he says firmly. I can't let you go home, even though you're over 16. He explains that if anything happens to Ben, then he could be held responsible. The commotion alerts the security staff, who rush over and insist that Ben cooperates. Ben refuses and begins to walk away, but the security guard is faster. He grabs Ben, turns him around and points him towards the entrance. Ben fights against him, attracting curious looks from the passers-by. The police are called over. Look here, Sonny, stop behaving like a 6-year-old, act your age and do what the doctor says. I can't believe that this is Ben being threatened by the police and getting violent. Intelligent, articulate Ben, who before the anorexia has always behaved impeccably. This is what the illness has done to my child, I think to myself, rooted to the spot, feebly observing events. I feel as if I'm in the path of a huge avalanche, powerless to do anything except let it run its course. I am the weak mother that can't handle her out-of-control teenager. I can see it in their eyes. There's no sympathy, no empathy. They're just doing their duty because they have to save lives and keep the peace. You have a choice, the doctor says to Ben. You can either come with me voluntarily and have the blood tests done, or I can get these guys to physically bring you in for me to do them. Whichever way, I will be doing the blood tests because I consider you to be high risk. He says he can't discharge him until they find out what is wrong. To my relief, Ben finally agrees to go back inside. We wait 3 long hours before the test results come back. This time it's a junior doctor from the cardiac ward who says they want to keep Ben in for observation. Faced with another night in hospital, Ben flips. He begins swearing and kicking things, trolleys, machinery, anything that's close by, before being physically restrained by male nurses. The horrified young doctor rushes off to ask his consultant what to do. Meanwhile, I stand there helplessly, the weak mother again. The nurse takes Ben's pulse. Not surprisingly, the uproar has brought it back to a reasonable level. To Ben's relief, he is finally discharged on condition that he undergoes weekly ECG checkups and blood tests with his GP. See, I told you I was okay. says the look he throws me as we leave. But it doesn't put my mind at rest. I suspect the only reason his pulse has gone back up is because of the commotion. What happens when he calms down? Thank God we're seeing Cams tomorrow. Thank God, too, that, as a psychiatrist, Sarah is a trained medical doctor, not just a therapist. She will know what to do. This is serious, says a grim-faced Sarah the next day, ignoring Ben's protests that the fainting was fake. You can't see what's going on inside your body, so you can't possibly know, she said. As a doctor, I'm well aware of the potential dangers. If I'm in the slightest bit worried about where things are going, I won't hesitate to hospitalise you. I won't wait until your BMI drops to the usual admission level. Her words are getting through to Ben, the boy who's always boasted that he'd be able to control his weight just above admission level. The word sectioned is used. The demon has finally been cornered. By this stage, Ben's weight has dropped to its lowest level, even lower than when I first took him to the GP 12 months ago. You've got to the stage where your body is literally beginning to eat itself, Sarah says sternly. I know how much you hate hospitals, but I won't hesitate to admit you if necessary. The effect her words have on Ben is startling. That's the end of chapter 21. Chapter 22 is called Turning Point, and there's a link to it at the end of this video. Thank you for listening. It would also be really good if you could like this video, and you can subscribe to my channel by clicking the subscribe button below. Oh, and don't forget to visit my blog. You'll find the link below. You'll also find a link to my website where you can download PDFs of my blog for free.